Welcome back to the show. My name's Mark Nixon. We got lots of news, so let's just get into it. Let's go. There's no amount of taxes, and I mean absolutely no amount, that you could pay for us humans to control the weather. It doesn't matter. You could abstract trillions upon trillions of dollars. The weather's going to happen regardless of how much money you pay into carbon taxes. I have a clip from Dr. Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace, which breaks down 3 things you need to know. There is zero climate crisis. This video clip is provided by Wide Awake Media on X.
There are 3 things you need to know that this whole thing about the climate change disaster or catastrophe or emergency is false. First, it is not too hot now. It is one of the coldest periods in the history of the Earth. That's why there's all that ice on the poles, which it wasn't there. For 150 million years before this ice age, there was no ice anywhere on this Earth because it was warmer, much warmer than it is today. Second, CO2 is lower now in the atmosphere than it has been throughout nearly the entire history of the Earth. Right now it's at 420. During the most recent glacial maximum, it went down to 180 parts per million, which is not far above the death of plants, because plants don't just need CO2, they need a certain concentration of it. And even at 420, it is still nowhere near the optimum level for plants. It should be 800, 1200, and then you start getting a much lusher vegetation all over the world. And already the greening of the Earth, as a result of our emissions of CO2, is 30% increased growth in the lush areas in the world. And the third thing you need to know is that all the CO2 that we are putting into the atmosphere, where did it come from? How did it get in the fossil fuels? By plants pulling it out of the atmosphere and the oceans. The plankton in the sea, the vegetation on the land, turned into coal, oil, and gas, and were lost from the air and the oceans. So all we're doing is replacing carbon dioxide. If there wasn't enough CO2 for the plants, we would all die too, because in the final analysis, plants are the bottom of the food chain. And so how can people be worried about putting CO2 back into the air and water, which was there in the first place? There's nowhere else it could have come from. It didn't come from Mars. It didn't come from the rocks. It came from the air and water, where it was much higher. And now we are replenishing the CO2 to a much better level than it had gone down to. We are the actual salvation of life on Earth. No other species could have done what we have done by burning the fossil fuels for energy.
He has a lot of points here. I'd love to look at some data, though. I'm a data guy, and when I look at data, let's fact check some of the things that he said. I want to look back long distance, because all the charts that they provide us is in the last 100 years. Well, we all know in the last 100 years, we've gone up 50% with our CO2. But if we look at long term, so the bottom graph here shows millions. So 65 million years ago, all the way to today, it maxed out at 1,600 parts per million. Here's the Earth's temperature for 485 million year history. And only most recently, it has dropped straight down to 15 Celsius. That's where we are today. So I wanted to verify that 30% increase. The Earth is greening. I didn't see 30%. I saw 5% over the last 2 decades, but that's just the last 2 decades. I don't know what it is over 100 years, but here are the areas that have greened in the last 2 decades. So it's estimated that we need to spend $4 trillion annually and $100 to $120 trillion over the next 30 years in order to get net zero. Our next story, even CBC are losing their minds that we don't have a budget this year. You got to check this out.
Not necessarily the explanations that were given on camera. You can understand why they might want a bit more time than 2 weeks from now to have to table a budget, because that's what you'd have to be ready for. But to not even give an update on the deficit projections and the economic projections, Fred, like that I don't get. Like, you may not have your whole plan ready to go with the dollar amounts and you want to talk to industry and these things, but like we have no idea what the financial track of the government is right now, and they're going to ask people to vote on a $5 to $6 billion tax cut without knowing where that fits into the bottom line.
And it goes against the entire narrative of Carney that he is the man with a plan. That's why he told Canadians, and it's why he won this last election. They believed he had a plan. And in fact, he used it as an attack point. A plan beats no plan. He has no plan now. He doesn't have a fiscal plan. Now, he was elected leader of the party in March. He could have given direction even before the election on what he wants his budget to look like. He had a costed platform. Why is there no budget? I find it absolutely mind-boggling that they're doing this, that not giving anything, any kind of a statement.
But what about if it was like, because I'm trying to wrap my head around this too, right? When you guys won government in 2006 with Harper, he was sworn in early February. Budget came in May. So if you give like a financial update now and a budget in September, you know what I mean? But it doesn't even seem like there's going to be a budget at all. It's going to be an economic state. A Feds, your favorite thing.
Right. So look, the Liberals have always been trying to figure out how to budgets balance themselves. Just don't have a budget balance. Look at that.
Right.
No, it's absurd. And even going to September, I think, is not acceptable. You look at the 2006 when Harper came in, that was a wholly transformed government.
I get it.
And they had a number of months to do it, and they did it. Carney became leader of the party in March. He was prime minister in March. He could have started giving direction, and he just had a fully costed platform. Former, again, central banker, Mr. Finance guy, worked at the Department of Finance, knows the ins and outs of that department. He was one of the guys that helped us do our budget in 2008 when we did it. So it just makes no sense to me. In 2011, we had an election, and a few weeks later, we brought in the budget. Now, it was the same government, same prime minister, but it makes no sense, and it goes against the entire narrative that he set up, that he was the man with the plan.
Greg, what do you think? I mean, are people making too much out of this, or is this really surprising and difficult?
Probably going to tick off a lot of Liberals here, but I don't disagree. I did not necessarily expect a budget. I did expect an economic update of some sort.
Yeah.
And I also think, because it's an opportunity, you have some transformative things that you want to do. You could drive them through the lens of your spring economic statement, however you want to spin it. Also, the lack of communications. Like you could have talked about, we want to get our middle class tax cut passed. We want that done, and then we need to know for this reason. There were lots of ways to communicate around this, but there's really been nothing. I mean, I was glad that the minister came and talked to you about it, but I think at that point there was hours and hours of people wondering, why is Mark Carney's government choosing to go in this direction?
It's like they didn't think
I
people
personally
would
don't
be
have a great
surprised.
answer. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like they didn't anticipate it, or maybe they just don't.
Are you surprised? Because I am so surprised. I've never heard of a government in history that doesn't have a budget. This is absolutely unacceptable. And we have this economic genius. He's done budgets his entire life, and you're telling me you can't put together a couple numbers for Canadians? This is what Canadians voted for, and they should be absolutely furious right now. And it's not just the budgets that's bothering me. Real news media, good on you. I like your clip. Let's take a look at taxes. Yeah, let's take a look at the taxes.
I think at a time when so many Canadians have suffered, we have to have zero tolerance for tax avoidance, for tax evasion, and our government is committed to
a robust and effective regime that will combat money laundering and tax evasion, improve Canadians' trust in the marketplace, and make Canada a leader in corporate transparency.
We've made sure to counter tax invasion by and investing more than $500 million to counter tax evasion.
We're investing an additional $520 million over 5 years to tackle tax evasion and improve tax compliance.
That there was an increase of $110 million for measures to crack down and combat tax evasion, tax avoidance.
Our government is firmly committed to combating tax evasion and tax avoidance. We have made investments and we've seen results of those, Madam Speaker, because we want a fair system.
Should Canadians infer from that that you wouldn't condemn the use of tax havens?
I very strong. I have a long career in the private sector. I have a longer career in the public sector.
The Liberals have always said they want to go after the big guys so that the little guy gets a tax cut. Well, it looks like they are getting led by the biggest tax dodger in Canadian history. $5 billion of taxes that were dodged. And let's not forget what Mark Carney told us time and time again.
The Canadian government has rightly retaliated and is rightly retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada. And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect.
Yeah, and we have receipts. If we go down to April 16th, it looks like our government removed the retaliatory tariffs with this remissions waiver of the above surtaxes, which is all of the above, which is unbelievable because that is during the campaign. Mark Carney held a private meeting. We had no idea what it was about. It was about removing all of the counter tariffs to make Donald Trump happy while he was campaigning about fighting with his elbows up. But in the meantime, he was not fighting for anything. He was folding like a lawn chair in a hurricane. And if you could see, he didn't publish this information until May 7th. That's right, after the election. The elbows up crowd should be furious today. You could also see in the highlighted area, which is the 16th of April, is when they registered to remove the surcharges. This is a tough pill to swallow because it's straight up. This is what happened. I'm sorry, but this is infuriating. And you know things are bad when Andrew Cohn, which was a big time supporter of the Liberals during the campaign, he says Carney is already steamrolling basic constraints on power. This is terrifying when you see this type of thing from lefties. All right, that's it for this report. I'm going to be providing lots more reports. I'm having a lot of fun. Make sure you leave a comment, like this video, share it with others. I'll see you on the next report.